What do you think about the minimum wage that's going to be introduced on the 1st of December?
I think it's ridiculous myself because it's not enough to live on. It's not enough because the prices of everything is sky high. Even for just an ordinary tin of syrup, it's nearly £4.
Falklands is not like UK. I mean, like, not UK, you got 99p store, you got all this. Over here, like, a bit of shoulder of mutton is like 20 odd quid or something. It's too expensive. Like, living down here is expensive, so what's the point of having high expensive living if you're going to have low income? I just see how a lot of people would struggle on that.
Do you think that the minimum wage fits and kind of adequately suits the cost of island life?
Yeah, it just seems a little bit on the low side.
The island living is quite expensive, like food-wise, and if you're renting, and you just wouldn't, I don't think you would manage.
Especially kids just leaving school looking for new work and trying to, save up and do things. So I don't know, I just think it'd be too difficult for a lot of starters, like new starters.
These were some of your opinions on the minimum wage last Friday. We put questions to the Falkland Island Government's Head of Policy, Jamie Fotheringham, who helped to draft the policy, and the Honourable Michael Poole, MLA. How were the calculations worked out essentially to kind of form these figures, such as £5.5 for people over the age of 18 and £3.10 for those 16 to 17? Was it worked out on the cost of island living, or how was it based?
The problem with that is we didn't really have any good data on the cost of living in the island, if you like. So what we did, we looked at a number of different methodologies you could use to calculate the minimum wage. What we decided was the most sort of pragmatic and sensible way as a first step in introducing the wage was to look at the income data we had from the census, and we took a level of median income, so it's kind of the midpoint of all incomes earned by people in the islands.
The minimum wage helps to establish a set rate of the lowest pay a person can receive per hour that will be paid to anyone working within the Falklands. The intention of the legislation is to act as a safety net and to ensure that nobody can be paid beneath this hourly rate. Considering a £5.05 per hour wage, which is obviously for anyone over 18, not just 18 to 21 as it would be in the UK, do you think that's a fair amount for people to be living on? Do you think that kind of people would actually be able to live on it, say for a single parent? Or,
I think the current kind of level certainly would be a challenge to live on. It's a pretty frugal lifestyle you'd have, but I think, as has been said, this is a first step. The previous Assembly had said that, and the current Assembly feels the same way, that we're interested to see a living wage work that Jamie and his team are looking at the moment. And I think once that information is available to us, we'll then have a discussion kind of with businesses, with the community generally, about how we can make sure that people actually earn a living wage in the Falkland Islands and what that living wage is.
Would it not have been better to have waited until this the cost of living on the islands was calculated before putting out a minimum wage? And obviously it's important to get a minimum wage established, but would it have been better to perhaps have waited until the proper costs were figured out?
Arguably, I suppose yes, but obviously it was a priority of the last Assembly to bring that in, and we tried to take a pragmatic approach and say, well, okay, here's how we can do it at the moment, but there are provisions within the legislation. We will be reviewing it annually. They'll be take a look every year at the rates that are set, and there's provision within the legislation that the rate can be changed, at any point in light of new information or new data.
The list of people entitled to the minimum wage includes full-time and part-time workers, temporary casual workers, and volunteers within Falkland Islands Defence Force, as well as many others. From the census report from Falkland Islands Government last year, statistics show that almost half of all residents report an annual income of less than £15,000, with less than 12% reporting incomes lower than £5,000. Unlike the UK, there is no minimum wage bracket for people aged 21 and over, meaning that under the soon-to-be implemented legislation, everyone above 18 would be entitled to the same rate per hour. We showed your responses to the minimum wage to Gavin Short, Vice Chairman of the General Employees Union, who wasn't surprised by the public's reaction.
I've said for a little while the minimum wage rate to me is low. I have nothing scientific to back that up on, if you see what I mean. It's just a gut feeling, living here day to day. I think you would struggle on that rate. That rate was calculated, it was done probably on not terribly scientific basis, as it were, because when we were working on the minimum wage, we were all sort of thrashing around in the dark slightly, trying to figure out how you computed the minimum wage. And I don't think we've got it right, I really don't. But I mean, my main thrust last year certainly was to get this legislation into place before the particular assembly came to an end.
He added that the legislation would act as a preventative measure to avoid current and workers of the future from being paid lower rates.
I think the main people to benefit from this, I've always said I'm looking forward more than perhaps at here and now, is of course the people at MPA who work for the Ministry of Defence subcontractors who were on pretty poor wages. And I also had one eye very much on the future, looking at maybe if ever we built a port or something and wanted to import a load of what could be seen as cheap labour from one part of the world or another. I certainly didn't want to see them exploited.
With the new minimum wage coming in on December the 1st and a report regarding the living wage yet to be released, the current minimum wage looks set to be raised, and it seems likely that changes could be made sooner rather than later. As MLA Michael Poole said, this is a starting point and somewhere to work up from, showing that more could be in the pipeline for the Falklands' first minimum wage to assist those living on the poverty line.